Liam took a deep breath as he stood in front of the towering glass building. It was his father's company, a place he had heard about all his life, but had never truly been a part of. He had just returned from completing his MBA abroad, and instead of stepping into a high-ranking position as everyone expected, he was starting at the very bottom as a cleaner. It was his father's idea. He wanted Liam to see the company from the ground up, to understand how it truly functioned, not from boardroom meetings and financial reports, but by being among the workers, unnoticed. Most importantly, his father wanted him to experience how people treated someone they believed had no power or influence. Liam didn't argue. He was curious. How did employees behave when they thought no one important was watching? Were they kind and respectful to everyone, or did they change their attitude based on a person's status? He wanted to find out. Dressed in simple, worn-out clothes, Liam entered the building, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. The lobby was bustling with employees rushing to their desks, barely glancing at him. He clutched his cleaning supplies tightly, trying to blend in. "Hey, you must be the new cleaner," a voice called out. Liam turned to see a middle-aged woman with a warm smile approaching him. "I'm Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Carter told me you'd be starting today. Welcome." Liam nodded, forcing a small smile. "Thank you." Mrs. Thompson led him down the hallway to the main office, where the other employees were already busy with their morning tasks. "Everyone, this is Liam, our new office cleaner," she announced. "He'll be responsible for keeping this place spotless." Some employees barely looked up, while others gave small, uninterested nods. But one man, Ethan, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Office cleaner, huh?" he muttered under his breath. Liam pretended not to notice. This was exactly why he was here, to see who people really were when they thought he was nothing. The next morning, Liam stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his blue and white cleaner's uniform. It felt strange. He had grown up in luxury, never once having to wear anything other than designer clothes. But this uniform symbolized something more than just a job. It was his ticket into the real world, a chance to see life from a different perspective. His father had always reminded him that wealth was a privilege, not a right. "Respect is earned by how you treat people, not by how much money you have," his father would say. Those words echoed in Liam's mind as he tied his hair back, picked up his cleaning supplies, and stepped into the office. The moment he entered, he felt the shift in the air. Some employees barely noticed him, while others glanced at him with mild curiosity. But one person in particular made it clear that he was not impressed: Ethan. Ethan was a senior employee, known for his arrogance and loud voice. He looked Liam up and down with a smirk. "Ah, the new cleaner," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Perfect timing. I just spilled coffee on my desk. Clean it up." Liam looked at the desk. The coffee had clearly been knocked over on purpose, the cup lying on its side with the liquid dripping onto the floor. He glanced at Ethan, who folded his arms, watching him like he was some sort of entertainment. Liam could feel his heart tighten with anger, but he reminded himself why he was here. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the cleaning cloth and started wiping the mess. Ethan chuckled. "You're slow. If you want to last here, you better learn to be quicker." Liam said nothing. He continued cleaning, keeping his face calm even though he could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up his neck. "That's more like it," Ethan said as he leaned back in his chair. Then, as soon as Liam finished, Ethan grabbed a piece of paper, crumpled it up, and threw it on the floor right in front of him. "Oops," he said with a fake innocent smile. "Missed the trash can." Liam clenched his fists but swallowed his pride and picked up the paper. Ethan laughed. "Good. You're learning." As Liam stood up, he caught the eyes of another employee, Daniel, who had been watching silently. Unlike Ethan, Daniel looked uncomfortable. Their eyes met for a brief second, and Liam could see the silent apology in them. He smiled slightly, then walked away. He had only just started, but he already knew this was going to be much harder than he expected. The days passed, and Liam slowly settled into his role as a cleaner. Every morning, he arrived early, dressed in his blue and white uniform, ready to start the day. He cleaned desks, mopped floors, and took out the trash, tasks he didn't mind. But what he did mind was Ethan. Ethan had made it his mission to make Liam's life miserable. It started with small things, deliberately dropping trash in places he knew Liam had just cleaned, calling him in a condescending tone, and making him redo tasks for no reason. But today, Ethan took things to a whole new level. Liam was wiping down the break room table when Ethan strolled in, holding a plastic bag filled with clothes. He tossed it onto the table beside Liam. "Take these to the laundry," he said, "and make sure you wash my white shirts properly. No stains. I like them crisp and clean." Liam frowned, looking at the bag. "I'm here to clean the office, not do personal errands." Ethan raised an eyebrow and let out a dry chuckle. "You're here to do whatever I tell you to do. Now take it and get moving." Before Liam could respond, Daniel, one of the employees who had been watching, finally spoke up. "That's not fair, Ethan. He's the office cleaner, not your personal maid. You can't send him to do your laundry." Ethan turned his head slowly and smirked. "Mind your business, Daniel." Daniel shook his head. "This isn't right, and you know it." Ethan ignored him and turned back to Liam. "Well," he asked, folding his arms, "are you going to take the clothes, or do I need to remind you who's in charge?" Liam felt the stares of the other employees in the room. He knew he was supposed to stay quiet and keep his cover, but this was beyond disrespectful. He swallowed his pride and shook his head. "That is not part of my job, sir." For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan laughed, loud and mocking. "Oh, we have a little rebel here, huh?" Before Liam could react, Ethan picked up a cup of water from the table and poured it over his head. The cold water ran down his face, soaking his hair and uniform. Gasps echoed around the break room. A few people looked away, uncomfortable, while others chuckled nervously, unsure of how to react. Liam stood frozen, the water dripping from his chin, his heart beating fast. But he refused to snap. He was here for a reason. Ethan grinned. "Next time, make sure the water you serve me is cold. I don't drink warm water." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough, Ethan." Ethan shrugged, unfazed. "Relax, Daniel. He's just a cleaner. It's his job to handle messes." Liam clenched his fists, his wet clothes sticking to his skin. He had never felt more humiliated in his life, but he didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply took a deep breath, grabbed a cleaning cloth, and started wiping the water off the table as if nothing had happened. Daniel looked at him with concern. "Liam," he started, but Liam shook his head slightly, silently telling him not to push it. Ethan smirked, clearly enjoying the power he thought he had. But Liam knew something he didn't. His time was coming. Liam had endured a lot in just a few days: humiliation, insults, and unfair treatment. But he had remained calm, observing, taking mental notes of those who showed kindness and those who followed Ethan blindly. Today, however, things took a darker turn. It was late afternoon, and most of the employees were either at their desks or taking a short break. Liam was cleaning the conference room when he heard the door click shut behind him. He turned around and found Ethan standing there, leaning against the door with his arms crossed, a smug grin on his face. "You're working hard," Ethan said, stepping closer. "I like that." Liam stiffened. Something about his tone made him uneasy. He had been around enough arrogant men to recognize when they thought they had power over someone. He kept his expression neutral. "I have work to do, Ethan. If you'll excuse me." Before he could move past him, Ethan reached out and touched his arm, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. Liam froze. "You know," Ethan said, lowering his voice, "I could make things a lot easier for you." Liam jerked his arm away, his skin crawling. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice tight. Ethan smirked. "I mean, you're new here, but I have influence. I could make sure you get better treatment, better opportunities, maybe even something bigger than this pathetic cleaning job. All you have to do," he leaned in slightly, "is make me happy." Liam's stomach twisted in disgust. He took a step back, keeping his eyes locked on him. "No," he said, his voice firm. Ethan's smile faded slightly. "Think about it, sweetheart. You work hard, but no one respects you. I could change that. I could protect you." Liam clenched his fists. "I don't need your protection." Ethan's expression darkened. "You should be careful how you speak to me. I have a good reputation here, and no one would believe a little cleaner over me." Liam's pulse pounded in his ears, but he refused to show fear. "Maybe no one will believe me now," he said quietly, "but people always reveal who they truly are, and sooner or later, they face the consequences." Ethan scoffed. "Big words for a nobody." He moved past him and yanked open the door. "You'll regret this," he said before walking out. Liam let out a shaky breath. He had seen enough. The day of the general staff meeting arrived. It was supposed to be like any other, But what Ethan didn't know was that something big was about to happen. Liam stood at the back of the conference room, wearing his cleaner's uniform, as the employees settled in their seats. Ethan, as usual, walked in with his overconfident smirk, completely unaware that his world was about to shift. At exactly 10 a.m., Mr. Carter, the CEO, walked into the room. The conversations died down as he took his place at the head of the table. He was a man of presence, calm yet commanding. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Carter began. "I've called this meeting for a very important announcement. But before we begin," his eyes landed on Liam, who stood quietly by the door, "I'd like to address something." Before he could say another word, Ethan's voice cut through the room. "Excuse me, sir," Ethan said loudly, turning to face Liam. "Why is he here? This is a meeting for important people. We don't need the cleaning staff here. He should leave." A few employees shifted uncomfortably. Daniel clenched his jaw, looking ready to say something, but before he could, Mr. Carter raised a hand. The room fell silent. "Mr. Ethan," Mr. Carter said, his voice steady, "I personally invited Mr. Liam to this meeting." Ethan's smirk faltered. "But sir, he's just—" "Enough," Mr. Carter said firmly. "You've said quite enough." Ethan looked around the room, clearly confused. Liam noticed how his fingers twitched slightly. For the first time, doubt was creeping into his confidence. Mr. Carter continued, looking around the table. "For months now, I have been preparing for a major change in this company. As most of you already know, I will be retiring in a few months, and I have taken the time to carefully select my successor." A murmur went through the room. Ethan straightened up, his ego returning. It was clear he thought he was the chosen one. Liam held back a smile. "And today," Mr. Carter said, "I want to formally introduce you all to the person who will take my place as the next CEO of this company." The room fell into a dead silence. Ethan looked expectantly at Mr. Carter, waiting to hear his name. Instead, Mr. Carter turned to Liam and said, "My successor is Liam." The reaction was immediate. Gasps filled the room. Some employees froze in shock, while others whispered to each other in disbelief. Ethan, however, went pale. "Liam?" he repeated, blinking rapidly. "Sir, that's not possible. He's just a—" Mr. Carter cut him off. "He is not just anything, Mr. Ethan. He is my son, Mr. Liam Carter, and he has been working undercover in this company to see the true character of those who work here." The entire room erupted in stunned silence. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Liam lifted his chin slightly, watching as realization finally sank into Ethan's face. Everything he had done, the insults, the humiliation, the harassment, had been witnessed by the one person he should have feared most. And this was just the beginning of his downfall. The silence in the conference room felt heavy. Ethan's face had lost all its color, his usual smirk replaced with wide-eyed shock. "This has to be a joke," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. "Sir, how can you make a low-level employee the CEO?" Mr. Carter leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Ethan, do you know what happens when people assume things without facts?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Liam," Mr. Carter continued, turning toward his son, "tell them about your qualifications." Liam, still in his cleaner's uniform, stood tall. "I have an MBA from Harvard, along with professional certifications in management and corporate leadership," he said, his voice clear and steady. A few employees gasped. Others exchanged shocked glances, realizing the person they had overlooked was far more qualified than any of them had assumed. Mr. Carter nodded and continued, his tone firm. "I suggested that Liam start from the bottom not because he wasn't capable, but because I wanted him to understand the core of this company. I wanted him to see firsthand how things are run, how employees behave, and who truly upholds the values of this company." His voice grew sharper. "What I did not expect was for my own son to experience such humiliation at the hands of someone who should have been a leader." The weight of his words hung in the air. Ethan swallowed hard, but quickly tried to regain his confidence. "Sir," he stammered, forcing a chuckle, "I mean, come on, we were just having a little fun." He was playing the role of a cleaner. "How are we supposed to know?" Mr. Carter's eyes darkened. "So you think it's acceptable to mistreat people simply because you believe they are unimportant?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably, but didn't answer. "Liam has been reporting everything to me," Mr. Carter continued. "I know about the insults, the humiliation, and the unethical favors you tried to force upon him." A few gasps rippled through the room. Some employees turned to look at Ethan with disgust. "You thought you were untouchable," Mr. Carter said, his voice steady but cold. "You thought your reputation would protect you, but your actions have spoken louder." Ethan gripped the table, his breathing quickening. The confidence he had carried effortlessly was starting to crumble. Liam watched him. This was the moment he realized he had played the game wrong. Mr. Carter took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. "This company does not tolerate abuse of power, Ethan, and there will be consequences for your behavior." Ethan's face drained of all confidence, and for the first time he looked afraid. The room was dead silent. All eyes were on Ethan, whose face was now pale with fear. His arrogance had vanished, replaced with something he had never expected to feel: panic. Mr. Carter looked at him with cold disappointment. "Ethan, effective immediately, you are fired from this company." Ethan's eyes widened in horror. "Sir, please, you can't do this." Mr. Carter remained unmoved. "This company has no place for men like you. I will not allow someone who abuses their position to continue working here." Ethan staggered backward, his hands trembling. "Sir, please, I have a family, a wife, children. They depend on me." Liam watched as desperation crept into his voice. Mr. Carter leaned forward slightly, his expression unchanged. "You forgot about your wife and children when you were harassing my son, didn't you?" Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You treated someone you thought was beneath you like trash," Mr. Carter continued, his voice calm but firm. "And now you beg for mercy when the consequences come knocking." Ethan dropped to his knees. "Please, sir, I made a mistake. I can change. Just give me another chance." But Mr. Carter had heard enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Inspector, yes, we're ready." Ethan's eyes darted around the room, panic setting in. Whispers spread among the employees as they realized what was about to happen. "No, no, no," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. "Sir, please don't do this to me." Before he could say another word, the office doors swung open. Two uniformed police officers stepped inside. The moment Ethan saw them, he sank lower, his entire body trembling. "Mr. Ethan," one officer said. Ethan turned to Mr. Carter, tears forming in his eyes. "Please, sir, I swear I didn't mean any harm. It was all a misunderstanding." Liam felt no sympathy. He had seen Ethan's true nature, how he had laughed when he humiliated him, how he had threatened him, how he had touched him without permission. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Mr. Carter gestured to the officers. "Take him." One officer grabbed Ethan by the arm, while the other pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "No, please don't do this." Ethan screamed, struggling, but it was useless. The entire office watched in silence as the once powerful Ethan was dragged away like a criminal. As he was led past Liam, he turned to him with wild, desperate eyes. "You did this to me," he shouted. "You ruined me." Liam met his gaze without fear. "No, Ethan. You ruined yourself." The officers pulled him through the doors, his pleas fading down the hallway. And just like that, he was gone. The office felt different after Ethan was taken away. The tension that had been lingering for weeks seemed to dissolve, replaced by a mix of relief, guilt, and reflection. Some employees who had laughed at Ethan's cruel jokes now looked ashamed, avoiding Liam's gaze. Others, like Daniel, stood taller, knowing they had done the right thing. Mr. Carter let the silence settle before clearing his throat. "Today," he said, his voice strong yet calm, "you have all witnessed an important lesson." The employees turned their full attention to him. "This company does not belong to me alone," he continued. "It belongs to all of you, the people who work hard every day to make it successful. But success is not just about numbers or profits. It is about character. It is about how we treat each other, not just our superiors, but those we believe have nothing to offer us." He let his words sink in. "There were those among you who chose kindness and integrity, despite the pressure to follow a bully." He glanced at Daniel and a few others. "And for that, you will be rewarded." Murmurs spread through the room as Mr. Carter turned to his assistant, Mrs. Thompson, who handed him a folder. "Effective immediately," Mr. Carter announced. "Those who demonstrated honesty and kindness in this workplace will receive promotions and incentives. People like Daniel, Mrs. Thompson, and others who stood against mistreatment will be given higher responsibilities with better rewards." Some employees gasped. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. "Sir, really?" Mr. Carter nodded. "You chose to do what was right, even when it was hard. That is the type of leadership this company needs." Daniel swallowed hard, his hands shaking slightly as he nodded. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. Mr. Carter smiled. I know you won't. Then he turned toward Liam, his expression softening as he stepped forward and pulled him into a warm embrace. I am proud of you, he said. You have shown strength, wisdom, and patience. You endured things no one should have had to, and yet you never lost your dignity. Liam closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the warmth of his father's embrace. This was not just about business. This was about trust. He had earned his place not because he was the CEO's son, but because he had proven himself. As they pulled apart, Mr. Carter turned back to the employees. Liam will take over as CEO, and I expect each of you to treat him with the same respect you would give anyone in a leadership position. He has worked hard, he has learned, and he is more than capable. Liam stepped forward, taking a deep breath. As CEO, he said firmly, this company will run on principles of fairness, respect, and integrity. No one will be judged by their title, but by their actions. If you work hard, you will be rewarded. If you abuse your power, you will face consequences. Simple. A few employees nodded, while others still looked uneasy, processing everything that had happened. But Liam wasn't worried. Change had begun, and he was ready. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.